funny that last time I did a satsang, I was meditating and auntie came to me and said, "Uncle, you're going to do satsang today." And the thought was there in my head saying that, somebody is going to ask me, and that's exactly what happened today also. So also, preface to what she said, in fact, that was exactly what I was going to talk about, to say that there's only one God. But we, when we grow up, especially in the land of India, where it's a kind of a blessed land, because it comes with a lot of faith, and the faith is in terms of positivity. So we are taught to, as a small child, the child looks upon his parents as a guru. And the reason the child looks upon the guru is because he doesn't know that there is an existence of something different than his mother or father. And if you look at the basic sense of your education, you go to the school because you need to remove your ignorance. And the guru does exactly the same thing. He removes your ignorance. And the ignorance actually, I think in my mind, is something which is what we fear inside. And the fear leads you to actually start believing in a lot of things. So I should not do that because this might happen, I should not do this, or this might happen, etc., etc. And we build all these layers as we grow older and older. And it's time to actually start removing that. And that's what the Guru says. He says, there is only one God, and have no fear, because if you work your karma without the fear, you're not going to have these layers of, these worships that, makes you believe that, if I touch him, or I do this, or I don't cut my nails on this day, or I don't do this, it's going to create a problem within your own health. So that negativity is what leads to problems within your own self. So have the faith, have the courage, have no fear, and when you have a belief in Guruji or Guru Nanak or Baba Birsa Singh, or whatever it is, whoever you believe in, that by itself, I think is more than sufficient. It's a funny incident. A few weeks ago, I was working out of Edison office, and there is a temple in Edison, and I think this is about a month ago. And so after my work, I decided I'm just going to go there and spend about 5 or 10 minutes in the Edison temple. I'll just sit there, meditate, and I'll come out. And I did that. It was, I think it was slightly cold day. So went, I meditated, I came out, and I wore my shoes and I walked right into the door. And I banged my head and, my forehead and my nose. I could have broken the glass, but I walked right in. And I didn't know what was the purpose, what was the reason why I got there. And I think it was a Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So Sunday morning, I get a call from my son, my younger son. And he says, I know, Dad, you're not going to like this, but I had some problem. He lives in Manhattan, and said, I have a problem. And I said, well, what is it? He said, I got head-butted and I broke my nose, right? Now, my first thought was that I actually might have, being his parent, and the concern for him, I might have taken a lot of his pain, because it could have been something more serious. Fortunately, it wasn't something which was earth-shattering, that he had a major, but it got repaired. And so, that now, when you tie up these sets of incidences, you tend to start having faith in, or belief in, whatever you believe in, right? And another example, many years ago, I used to work at Wall Street, and I was standing outside, I was smoking a cigarette, and suddenly a gentleman appeared. He was a Sikh. He appeared and said, I can tell you everything about you. I was literally shocked, right? And I said, really? I said, what do you mean? And I was going through some marital problems and all that. So he says, do you have time to sit down with me for 10-15 minutes? So I said, sure. He's an Indian, I'm an Indian, and I said, what am I going to lose? Nothing really, right? So I went, I sat down, and he started telling me about my wife's name, my children's name, and he told me about the marital problems I was going through. he says the only thing you need to have is faith. And he gave me a small picture, and he gave me a picture of Shivji. And I could not connect at that point in time as to who it is, because I had no idea about Guruji at that point in time. And then, years later, I would go to India every year, and then I have a friend who lives in Sultan Estate, or the Empire State, and she lives right next to the Chota Mandir. So it's right at the corner, and her house is on the left side. So I must have passed that area, practically every year from 1991 all the way to 2014. And I had no idea who it was, but I used to see, people congregate there. And I would ask her, I said, oh, she says, don't worry, they do all these prayers and everything else. So, I never thought about it. And then, a few years later, there was a lady, my neighbor, she used to do these regression therapies. And so I wanted to regress myself, just out of interest. And when she regressed, I went into a certain state, I cannot explain, but when I woke out of that state, the first picture I saw was Guruji's picture. A few years later, we were in Indiana, and there was a marriage that was taking place, and so everybody went around saying Jai Guruji, Jai Guruji, and I could understand what that Jai Guruji was. And this my nephew whose wedding it was, so they basically had at some point when they were taking the pictures, they basically came out and said, we see a Om behind his head, and Jai Guruji, right? I still couldn't figure out, what the connection was. And I asked my cousin, I said, what is all this? So he says, I'll explain it to you later. Well, he came down to New Jersey, and we were having lunch at Mithas, and he said, I think there is a Guruji temple somewhere around here, and I would like to see. So I Googled, and sure enough, I knew that. I said, it's just about half a mile from here. I said, I'll take you there. So I walk in, and I see, Guruji's picture, and I said, I know him. So, if I tie up all these instances for the last 10 years, right, every step of the way, I think there has been a blessing, and I didn't really need to be connected at that point in time. So, but it was always there. So I think it's a question, of your belief, of your faith. But, it doesn't need to be a blind faith or a blind aspect of saying, if I do this, this is not going to happen. I think we need to remove all those negativity out, right? We need to have that positive aspect of it. Just like a small child who believes in his mother and his father without having the fear, he knows that he can do anything because he's got somebody behind him. And that's exactly how we must feel. Right? So with that, thank you, and Jai Guruji.